Hi there, and welcome to Her Season of Strength, where women over 40 reclaim their bodies, their energy, and their voices without apologies. I'm Kim Duffy, registered dietitian, personal trainer, mom, and your biggest hype woman when it comes to aging like you mean it. This show isn't about chasing skinny or counting wrinkles. It's about building real strength, physical, emotional, and hormonal. Each week, I'll share straight-talking nutrition tips, sustainable fitness strategies, and conversations that help you feel powerful in your skin once again. Menopause isn't an ending, it's only the beginning. This is your season of strength. Hello, and welcome back to Her Season of Strength. I am so happy that you're here and taking just a couple minutes to listen in. Today, I wanted to talk about something that I know is weighing on a lot of women right now. That's GLP-1 medications. And more specifically, this question that I hear frequently is GLP-1 cheating? That question usually comes with a lot of emotion, guilt and shame and fear of judgment, and sometimes even embarrassment for needing help. So I want to be very clear about what this episode is and what this episode is not. This is not an episode where I'm telling you whether you should take a GLP-1 or not. I'm not getting into dosing or prescribing or making medical decisions for you. That's always a conversation between you and your healthcare provider. What this episode is about is how women feel about taking them. Because after being a dietitian for over 30 years, I can tell you with certainty, women are incredibly hard on themselves when it comes to weight and health and needing support. And this conversation has stirred up a lot of old diet culture baggage. But first, before we dive in a little bit deeper, quick life update because I love sharing this part with you. So I opened the doors to Strong in 21 program here on Monday. And as I'm recording this, it's only been one day and women are actually already signing up, and it's so exciting. For a brand new program, I wanted to create something that gave lots of information and also that personal touch. But I have to say, in the 4+ years that I've been in my own private practice, I have provided a lot of free things, a lot of free like master classes and programs and stuff. And I don't feel like people take them as seriously as when they actually have to invest a little bit. So thus you see why I created Strong in 21, and it's 21 days for $21, because come on, who can't afford to pay $1 a day? Maybe we just skip our Caribou coffee for 2 or 3 times. Or maybe we, look at some other little luxury that, costs $1 a day that maybe we limit for 3 weeks, because I think it puts a little skin in the game. And for $21, I feel like you are getting a whole lot of information. There's actually weekly 90-minute masterclasses, and I am still working on topics for them, but some of the things I'm thinking of are supplements, because women are always asking, what supplement should I take? What are good supplements? How do I know if they're good supplements? And it's not also about pushing supplements either. It's about knowing when you need a supplement and when you don't need a supplement. Another thing I thought about talking about is, obviously hormone support is the most important for women our age, and what are the best ways to support our hormones. That might be in one of the master classes. I'm just kind of throwing some different things around. So, hey, if you have any thoughts or ideas of some things that you would really like to learn about, please email me or, just send a message through whatever platform you're listening to. But you can always email me at info@strengthandnutrition.com and just let me know, hey, I'd really love to learn about this or that when it comes to nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, wellness, and all those good things. So it lights me up. I love hearing about those things. And I also really love taking a deep dive and researching and learning about different topics, and then, giving the information to you so that you can kind of pull it apart and decide what it is that you want to take from that. So, Strong in 21, it starts January 26th. It's going to be focused on, there's going to be a strength training component, but it's going to be short 30-minute workouts up to, 2 to 3 times per week, because this is about, I wanted to make this program be about something that is sustainable for the long term, not some quick fix, right? Some way to build that foundation for you, that base that's going to carry you through the entire year. You're going to build those strong habits so that you're not feeling like you need that reset at the beginning of January. That's precisely why I created it. So you're going to hear me reference to it later because it fits really naturally into this conversation. So first of all, I want to go back to GLP-1s here. So I want to start with kind of a simple high-level explanation of what GLP-1s are. And if you haven't listened to my previous episode, I did have another episode on GLP-1s. And it was way back in, I got to remember here, I'm looking for it. Sorry, it's called Quieting Food Noise. And it's what GLPs turn down and what you must turn up. And that is, I published that back in September. It is episode 7, which I will link in the show notes if anybody is interested in going back and listening to that, because I don't want to cover the same things in this episode that I did cover back then. This is going to be a little bit different, a kind of a different take on it. So specifically, just to touch on it, GLP-1 medications, they are medications that actually mimic that hormone in your body that it already produces, that hormone that plays a role in our appetite regulation, in our feeling of fullness signals when we're hungry, and blood sugar control, right? So in simple terms, the medications help people to actually feel fuller sooner, stay fuller longer, decreasing appetite, and just improving how the body handles blood sugar. So it increases, that sensitivity to our blood sugars, right? All of these things help us to eat less, typically. And that's not the only thing that it does, and that's not the only way that they work to lower, to help with fat loss. Some of the more common ones that you might have heard of include medications with generic names like semaglutide or tirzepatide, or you might also recognize the brand names like Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, or Zepbound. Like any medication, though, these medications can have side effects, and it seems like everybody has talked to a friend or a family member or a loved one or somebody who has taken or is currently taking these medications. So there's a lot of different things being thrown around, but the most common side effects that you're going to hear about are going to be things that affect like your gut, your intestine, things like nausea or maybe some stomach discomfort. Some people might have a little vomiting, especially early on. One important thing is to note that appetite suppression can make it harder to eat enough protein. So there's some people that on these medications that will say, I can't eat, or I can only eat very small amounts, or the only things that I want to eat are carbohydrates or fruit or something like that. And a lot of times they're not craving the protein piece. And here is the key point I want you to understand is this episode is not about this medication itself. It's about the story that women are telling themselves about needing it. Okay. So first of all, let's just talk about that word cheating. Where does that even come from? Diet culture taught women that weight loss only counts if it's hard. That struggle equals success, and that if it doesn't feel miserable, it must not be legitimate. We were taught that willpower equals worth, that discipline equals morality, and that needing help somehow means you didn't try hard enough. After 30 years of working with women in this field, I can tell you that biology, hormones, stress, sleep, medications, the stage of life we're in, and aging all dramatically impact how our bodies respond. And it's not a fair fight. So when a woman says, I feel like I'm cheating, what I actually hear is I feel guilty for taking care of myself in a way that I was taught was unacceptable. And that breaks my heart. Because no one would tell you that taking medication for blood pressure or for lowering your cholesterol or for diabetes is cheating. But for some reason with weight, that somehow became a moral issue. And you might even find that other health influencers, other trainers might say it's cheating. that you're just not putting in enough time in the gym, or that you're not, doing enough meal prep or planning or eating healthy enough. And that's, I have worked with too many women, and I personally, intimately, I know how food can affect our emotions, and how easy it is to, when we're stressed, when we're tired, when we're sad, especially once our hormones are going crazy and that estrogen is dropping, food can really be a challenge, and cravings can be a challenge, and eating well can be a challenge. So another reason why I want to reframe this conversation is because GLP-1s aren't just about weight loss. Research consistently shows improvements in blood sugar regulation and reduced risk of type 2 diabetes. And we know with women in menopause that we can become less sensitive to insulin. So we can start to see those blood sugars get a little higher, and our A1C increasing. I've talked about this on previous episodes. This is key. This is vital for decreasing inflammation in our body, for decreasing cravings. I mean, that's what all of the changes that I typically are talking to people about in general when they want to be healthier. Most of the recommendations I'm making are around ways to balance blood sugars better, right? Because we know that that's going to help decrease our risk of all these diseases, of all these chronic illnesses, of increased inflammation, of, just how we feel day to day, our energy levels. But also with these medications, we're also seeing improvements in lipid profiles. So it'd be like your cholesterol, your HDL, your LDL, and also decreasing cardiovascular disease risk. So, this is huge for women in midlife, because that's another thing we see. It's like once we don't have that estrogen protecting us, we will see our cardiovascular risk of heart disease, it skyrockets after we hit menopause. And then, not to mention, yes, we are seeing that GLP-1s are creating some good weight loss. And that itself can have real, meaningful health benefits that go far beyond appearance. That means less weight on our joints, can mean less joint pain. That can mean reduced inflammation, can mean moving more comfortably. Feeling physically better can improve our overall quality of life. And yes, feeling better in your skin and more confident in your body, that matters too. It does. And you're not being selfish to want that. That's not vanity. That's mental and emotional health. Women deserve to feel good in their bodies, not constantly at war with them. So now this is where my dietitian and personal trainer brain, it really wants to make sure that you're informed. GLP-1s can be incredibly helpful in all of the ways that we were just talking about, but they don't replace habits. One of the biggest concerns we see in the research is unintentional undereating, especially with protein. Adequate protein intake, we know that it is so important for preserving our muscle mass. Helping when we're losing that weight, we want to maintain the muscle and focus on fat loss, right? But when we're losing it quickly like that, and when we're not eating well, we're not getting enough protein, we're also going to be losing muscle. And, muscle supports our metabolism. It supports our strength, our balance, our stability, and our independence as we get older. So strength training is, or protein intake and strength training are a non-negotiable when it comes to GLP-1s. They are vitally, vitally important. Research consistently shows that weight loss without resistance training increases that risk of muscle loss. And GLP-1s, they're not going to build muscle. When we're taking them, they're not going to just naturally increase our muscle mass. They don't teach us how to eat. They don't create routines for us, right? They can open that door and help us with that weight loss, but the habits are going to determine what happens next. Going to determine that kind of long-term sustainability. Because without those habits, we often see muscle loss and weight regain. With habits, we see focused fat loss with muscle maintenance and strength gain in a long-term sustainable way, which helps to build our confidence because you finally feel like you have some control. right? It's not 100% dependent upon that drug that you're taking, right? Now let's talk about something else that doesn't get nearly enough attention, and that's what happens after someone stops taking GLP-1s. This is where a lot of fear lives. I mean, because when we start these medications, we're not thinking of like, oh, I'm going to be on these for the rest of my life. Maybe you're thinking, oh, I'll take this for 4 months or 6 months or a year. Or, some people have a lot of side effects and they just really can't tolerate them. And so, they'll go off of them. But research shows that when these medications are discontinued, many people regain a portion, if not all, if not more, of the weight if they don't have those supportive lifestyle habits in place. So that doesn't mean the medication failed. It just means biology does what biology does when your appetite returns and that structure disappears. So some studies suggest that a significant amount of weight can be regained within a year after stopping if we don't see that good nutrition quality, if we don't see that physical activity and movement, and if we don't see strength training, which is going to help to maintain that metabolism, right? Here's the part that often gets left out, and that research also shows that individuals who prioritize balanced nutrition, adequate protein, and regular physical activity, especially resistance training, have much better long-term outcomes. And we don't have a lot of long-term studies on these GLP-1s, and I think that's where it can be a little scary, is because we don't have a lot of studies that are looking 20, 40, 60 years out for people who have taken the GLP-1s and what are we seeing with it. But we do have short-term studies that are showing, we know that without these medications that the weight will be regained if we don't have these good habits in place, right? Muscle mass is going to be better preserved when we have the strength training. We're consuming enough protein. We're going to have, it's going to support that metabolic rate better. And weight regain, if it happens, is going to be smaller and more manageable. And this makes sense. GLP-1s help regulate appetite and our blood sugar, but they don't create muscle or habits. So people who use GLP-1s as a tool, just one piece of the big puzzle within a broader lifestyle approach, not a replacement for it, consistently fare better long term. So many of these, a lot of times, these GLP-1s are given by a doctor, but not necessarily always with maybe appointments with a dietitian or appointments with a personal trainer or with, other ways to help. It just gives them, a pamphlet or maybe an email or maybe a phone app that tells you, eat more vegetables, drink more water, get good sleep, exercise, right? So it's important, so people are having to do it on their own. And honestly, when they are having some of these side effects, when you're not feeling hungry, when you are having some nausea and vomiting, you're not feeling all that much like working out, right? Or like I said, you're not feeling like eating a chicken breast. You're just like, oh, my tummy's upset. Maybe I just want some crackers or something like that. I also want to normalize something. Weight fluctuations after stopping a medication does not mean you failed either. They just mean that your body is responding to just those changing signals, right? The goal is not perfection or permanent control. The goal is resilience. And resilience, it comes from habits. Protein helps preserve lean mass. Strength training protects our metabolism and our independence. Movement improves also insulin sensitivity and our joint health. And consistency is going to build that confidence. And I talked about that in last week's episode, just talking about consistency and what we need to continue and to build that consistency. So what you're building while you're on the GLP-1 matters just as much as the medication itself. So now, going back, this is why I created Strong in 21. And this is why I talk so often about GLP-1s and medications, because they are everywhere right now. And as a dietitian, I never want a woman to think that I look at medications as failure or as cheating, quote unquote, right? I believe they can be an amazing tool. And I see there are people that are getting so many results from them. And, and many doctors working in this field will say that it may be a medication that you need to take for the rest of your life. Regardless of whether you're on the medication for short term, if you never take it at all, or if you're on it for the long term, we still need to build those basic habits, build that foundation. Okay? So, this is exactly why I built the Strong in 21, because it's creating that foundation. It supports women who are currently on GLP-1s and want to protect that muscle, that strength, and that long-term health. And it also supports women who are considering GLP-1s and want to see what's possible when they focus on protein, strength training, hydration, and consistency first, maybe before they choose to go on it. This isn't about proving anything. It's about giving yourself tools. Strong in 21, we start January 26th, so the doors just opened this week. They will close on January 25th. And it's been so awesome seeing women, say yes to themselves, and decide that they want to build this foundation. So let's come back to that original question we talked about. Is taking a GLP-1 cheating? No, it's support. It's healthcare. It's one tool in a much bigger picture of health. You don't need to earn wellness through suffering, and you don't lose your worth because you needed help. The goal is not to do this, the hardest way possible. The goal is to feel strong, capable, and well. And if this episode resonated, share it with a friend who might be struggling silently with this same question. I would greatly appreciate it if you'd leave a rating or review if this show has been helpful, and message me on socials or via email and tell me what landed. I truly love hearing from you. And if you're ready to build habits that support you for the long haul, Strong in 21 starts January 26th. Doors are open, and I cannot wait to walk alongside these women. Remember, this is about progress over perfection. We're in this for the long haul, and this is your season of strength. Have a fantastic day.